I'm joined now by lacrosse great and co-founder of the Premier Lacrosse League, Paul Rabil. Now, Paul, the PLL's first ever playoffs are set to begin September 6th. So
yes.
Obviously an exciting time for the league. But for you, even more so, and it's very interesting, your story, given that you are both a player for Atlas, but also a co-founder of the league. You know, how does that work? How does that play into your thought process right now?
Well, it's difficult. I'm 33. I've been playing professionally for 12 years now, and we just started the Premier Lacrosse League. We're in our inaugural season. And the thought process was around elevating the sport and creating a league that can appropriately compensate its players while also commercialize the sport in a way that we think lacrosse kind of needs and can provide the resources such that it can go into the mainstream ecosystem and then give it its distribution. So all of our games are on NBC and NBC Sports. So as a player with that vision, I wanted to make sure that I could kind of maintain my time on field while I still had it, which I do. And then we had to draw out the principles and structure of the league such that there's no conflict. But it would be like Dana White fighting in the UFC or Adam Silver maybe playing for the Washington Wizards.
Yeah. Well, Michael Jordan once played for the Washington Wizards when he had some ownership interest, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he had the ownership interest then, but if he did, maybe we should have a conversation.
Well,
I don't know, Michael.
There was definitely a Jay-Z line. He said, "I'm Michael Jordan. I play for the team I own." When he was in charge of Rockefeller Records at the time, so there was some sort of synergy.
There you go.
But you touched on it. There's two things I want to expand on what you just said. Number one, the conflict aspect of it. Was there any conflict of interest? Is there? How did you address that, given that you were both a player and at the top?
Yeah, so conflict for me has kind of two heads. The first is from the business perspective, which is making sure that we have our lacrosse org that functions and is bifurcated from the rest of the commercial component that I oversee. So we have our head of lacrosse, our directors of operations, our directors of officials, and then all of our coaches and teams that are autonomous of each other. So we built the principles around making sure that I had no influence on what takes place from college draft to outcomes in games. And we know that at the highest level in professional sports, which we have the best players in the world, and this comes the psyche element, is that once an athlete steps on the field, and all athletes can identify with this, everything else, all of the distractions go away. And so one of the things that I was anticipating leading into the season was, hey, looking at our A-frames and the LED boards and the crowd and security and making sure that the game was appropriately commercialized and functioning well while I'm playing. But I honestly haven't thought about that once through the first 10 games that I've played in. It's all focused on field and making sure I'm doing my job.
So there's never a moment when you score an awesome goal and you're like, yeah, this is great for the league.
Well, no, I haven't. But now that you've seeded that thought in my head, I think generally when we score goals across the board, I'm going, this is great for us as a team and will be great for the league or any league. As I think what we've done well so far is capture attention. And that be through our distribution on network television. It's our social and digital team, our in-house media, creative, and production groups that we've invested in, and being able to constantly spearhead the marketplace with great messaging on what lacrosse is, great highlights and storylines of our players. And so sports are entertainment, and it's about not only showcasing the best product in the world on field, but doing so at scale.
And that was to your big picture point, because lacrosse is huge in certain pockets, but it hasn't really broken through nationally. What do you think is the missing ingredient there?
Well, if you look at most sports trajectory over time, and you look at a century of sports leagues, is that it has to have a meaningful grassroots push, traditionally. And lacrosse has had that over the last 15 years. It's been the fastest youth sport that's seen growth year over year all over the country and internationally. We just got IOC recognition last November, so we're in contention and have Olympic recognition to participate potentially in 2024. Secondarily, though, with new media and new technology, is that you've seen kind of niche sports emerge, and MLS now has jumped into, in the US, a top 5 sport, but even UFC, Drone Race League, esports. So you're seeing sports now take advantage at the professional level without having necessarily youth participation growth. So we're at the influx of and benefit of having both to our disposal, and we've been activating the commercial and distribution element, again, with our partnership with NBC and what we've done on social. But our headquarters are in LA. So traditionally a Northeast sport, as you had mentioned, we've seen wider growth east to west, and our league's embracing that by putting a major footprint out in California.
And you seem to think presentation very important in that. Is that why, you're doing behind the scenes interviews and red carpets and miking people up and the like? Is that part of that goal?
Yeah, well, sports are show business, right? And athletes are aspiring figures, and we're seeing more and more athletes that are comfortable in their own skin and embracing what they do and vocalizing their beliefs. And we think that for a sport like lacrosse that's elevating into the realm of basketball, football, baseball, and the likes, is that we need to also market and create those opportunities and cater to our audience and a wider audience that's not familiar with lacrosse. And ways to do that are a lot of times what you're covering off the field. You only have so many games in a season, so what do our athletes do? What do they dress like? What do they like to eat? Do they have fashion interests? Do they take entrepreneurial spirit from certain icons or mentors? And so our media team's always on.
What's more interesting, your fashion choices or your food choices?
Well, it depends on who you ask. I'm Lebanese, so my brother, who's the co-founder and CEO of the PLL, he's one of the best cooks next to my mom. And so if you like Greek or Mediterranean food,
I love it.
You would jump there. And then if you like someone who potentially stitches different costumes together and walks out on a red carpet and thinks he looks good, then you might choose my fashion.
I'll go with the former. All right. Now, when you get bigger, obviously one thing that becomes involved, of course, is money and sponsorships.
Yeah.
And I saw you lost a New Balance sponsorship because you were wearing Adidas in game, and they are the official partner of the league itself. How much sway and influence do those major apparel brands have?
Well, they have a ton, right? We were sitting down with Sophie Goldschmidt, who's the CEO of World Surf League, and they built their business 5 years ago, which was previously controlled by the sponsors, right? And the flip side of the coin is that sporting goods manufacturers help the youth growth in any game. So you have to create a symbiotic relationship. And previously in the former league, Major League Lacrosse, the 4 of the 9 teams were owned by the chairman of New Balance, and they had an exclusive sponsorship deal over the league. So you didn't have much opportunity for players to partner with other brands or invite other brands in the league. So going back to our first question around conflict, is I had to make a decision with my brother around, okay, I have a personal endorsement with New Balance. We'd love to have New Balance and Warrior in the PLL, but we know that that's going to potentially be at stake for the broader health of the PLL because our official outfitter is Adidas. We have over 7 endemic brands that are also sponsors of the league, and then we have over 7 that are non-endemic and sponsors of the league. So in the end, we live in a highly competitive environment, so it's incumbent on us to build the right framework so that sponsors are coming in and knowing what they're getting, and we're over-delivering in return. But as a result, I did lose my New Balance deal. We contended why. Don't believe that it was terminated appropriately. But nevertheless, the North Star for me is the PLL and the continued growth of the sport.
Real quick elevator pitch. You have a huge general sports audience, obviously, Sports Illustrated, and many have heard of lacrosse, may be curious about lacrosse. Why should they check out the Premier Lacrosse League?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. It's the fastest game on 2 feet. But historically, what many people don't know is that it's also the oldest team sport in North America. It was founded by the indigenous people. It's over 1,000 years old. Over the last 3 decades or so, it has been associated with more of a Northeast private school sport. It's expensive to play like hockey and golf. And so what we're doing is try to lower that barrier to enter, but we're also showcasing the game and the history and the roots of the game at its finest. So what you can do is tune into NBC any weekend and watch our athletes that are highly skilled, many of which have played other sports and in some cases played in the NFL or the NBA and are finding their roots back in the PLL. So it's a lot like hockey. The ball's off the ground. There's more ball possession, so that's exciting. It's super fast, up and down, a lot of goals, and we promise that if you watch it, you'll enjoy it, and we hope that you'll keep coming back to see more.
Paul Rabil, both star and co-founder of the Premier Lacrosse League. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.